In Blizzard's recent blue post on hero talent trees, the developers went over a couple of their goals for hero talents, including what they're trying to avoid. So I'm going to be critiquing, or you could say grading, Blizzard on their work according to the standards and goals that they set. The first hero talent tree on the chopping block for me is Keeper of the Grove. This is going to be the hero tree for Restoration and Balance Druids, at least one of the options that those specs have. And it's going to focus, for Resto, it's going to focus almost entirely on Grove Guardians. Now keep in mind that we're going to get all of these talents. It's not just one branch that the arrows might suggest. We get all of them. Dream Surge gives us a little bit more AoE healing on the button that we press that already gives us a little bit of AoE healing. Treants of the Moon causes our Grove Guardians to do a little bit of damage by pressing Moonfire. Expansiveness increases maximum mana by 5%. Protective Growth causes regrowth to grant an 8% damage reduction. Cenarius's Might allows us to increase our regrowth, wild growth, or swift mend by 10% if those are the only buttons we're pressing, stacks up to 20%, but if we press anything else, we lose the buff. And Booming Infusion grants us a free Wrath, Starfire, or Entangling Roots after casting Regrowth 5 times and increases the damage that those offensive abilities do by 100%. And then finally, Harmony of the Grove is the capstone, which increases your healing done by 3% for each Grove Guardian that is active. As far as the choice nodes go, we can either choose to make our Grove Guardians proc a Cenarian Ward. I'm guessing it's going to be extremely weak on the targets they heal and will really just be a mastery buff rather than any significant healing. Or Grove Guardians increase Rejuve, Efflow, and Life Bloom healing by 5%. Then the choice of Bounteous Bloom or Early Spring is just deciding whether you want your Grove Guardians to be 20% stronger or have 20% increased cooldown recovery rate. So you get effectively 20% more of them or make them 20% stronger. Power of the Dream, as far as I can tell, is just a 5% spell damage or healing buff, or a passive that grants up to 5 seconds taken off cooldowns when we press them next, depending on how long they've been off cooldown for. And then finally, Grove Inspiration or Persistent Enchantments is choosing between 6% regrowth, wild growth, or swift mend healing, or Reforestation grants Tree of Life for 2 additional seconds. Now, Keeper of the Grove was one of the hero talent trees that was released quite early, so it was difficult to really put this in context. Like, these are all nice bonuses, I guess, if all the other healers have what feels like similar bonuses. But after seeing now 5 of the 13 total healing hero trees, I don't feel like that's the case. So as far as grading it by Blizzard's own standard, is there enough damage or healing in this talent tree to be significant but not overshadow the class and spec tree? Yes, I would say most of that, the lion's share of that, is going to come from really just choosing between Bounteous Bloom or Early Spring for effectively 20% stronger Grove Guardians, and then the first passive and the final capstone passive, depending on how those two passives are tuned. But much of these other talents seem borderline worthless to me. Getting what I assume will be an absolutely tiny amount of damage out of a Moonfire, or having 5% increased mana, or getting 5% increased Rejuve, Efflow, and Life Bloom healing while the Grove Guardian is active, or getting 1 free Wrath or Starfire instant cast for every 5 regrowths we cast, all seem, borderline useless. The defensive is quite nice because it can be up 100% of the time. You can just keep your regrowth hot on yourself at all times and get an 8% permanent DR. This is one of those things that I don't see going live. It's too strong. This is significant, so it passes the check on number 1, at least preliminary check, but it fails the does this overshadow class or spec tree options. Yes. An 8% permanent DR is very strong, stronger than anything you can get on the class or spec tree. So I assume that's going to get nerfed. Almost the same criticism with Bounteous Bloom and Early Spring. 20% buff to Grove Guardians is pretty huge, but it also seems like the only thing that's really that powerful on this whole tree. As for number 2, are both of these trees roughly balanced in PvP, Mythic Plus, and Raid? I'm going to say yes to this, but also for the wrong reasons. I haven't covered the other tree yet, that'll be the next video. But yes, Keeper of the Grove and Wildstalker seem like roughly equivalent in power, but unfortunately that's because they both kind of suck and they both seem very underpowered. The only outlier here is Grove Guardians are especially strong in PvP, so any hero talent tree that increases Grove Guardian power significantly, like a 20% buff to them, and a bit of extra free healing that doesn't cost mana, and a 8% DR if you want it, is probably going to stand out in PvP a lot more than what the other tree provides. But that doesn't seem like a failure of the number 2 criteria for me here, because I think most classes will have something like that. Specifically regarding PvP, does the tree feel required due to one talent feeling mandatory? No, but protective growth is the only thing that could possibly fill that role or become that problem. Like I said, it's probably going to get nerfed, so I doubt it's going to be much of an issue. And number 4, does the tree affect your capabilities, rotation, what you focus on in combat, or what you track on your user interface? Now, this is the major failure of both of the Resto Druid trees, in my opinion, is that they just overwhelmingly fail the number 4 criteria. Nothing here changes the way that Resto Druid would play, what it would be capable of doing, what its strengths and weaknesses might be, what it tracks, how it plays its rotation, what decisions it makes in combat, nothing. This would just be like number go up, but very, very small passive amounts. Like if you played Keeper of the Grove, your Grove Guardians would be stronger, but that's it. Wouldn't change anything else. It would just be however you played Resto Druid without Keeper of the Grove. If you spec Keeper of the Grove, your trees are 20% stronger. And that's pretty much it. It's almost impressive how Blizzard have managed to actually put 11 passives in this tree, and it feels like all of them do nothing. Now, because criticism is so cheap and easy to make, I wanted to quickly talk about what I would like to see. I'm happy with the defensive. Each hero talent tree is going to have one defensive. The protective growth, the idea of it, regrowth providing a DR, is quite good. I'm pretty happy with that. 8% is too strong. That's like, I know it's only on the player. I mean, that's larger damage reduction than Earth Shield. That's too strong. There should probably be like 3 or 4. I like this playing with the damage idea. Treants of the Moon, your Grove Guardians cast a Moonfire, but I would like to see it become not just a passive. Maybe when you press Wrath, your Grove Guardians press Wrath, or something to that effect. Like when you are doing damage, they're doing additional damage. Something that you could play around, make decisions around that might affect your gameplay. Maybe you know you don't have a lot of healing, but there's a large burn phase or something coming up and you would like to contribute as much damage as possible. Maybe you press all your Grove Guardians and then turret spam your Wraths to do as much damage as you can. I also somewhat like the idea of what they're doing here with Power of Nature. Your Grove Guardians increase the healing of your Rejuve, Airflow, and Life Bloom by 5% while active. But I think some sort of bonus or some sort of talent option that turns your Grove Guardians into little stat sticks for you is a fun idea to play with, but it needs to be something that's a little bit more powerful, not as available. Because for this sort of thing, I think the 5% approach or the 6% approach with Grove's Inspiration is just, it's too minor. It isn't enough to be worthy of playing around or thinking about, but it's obviously up too often to be a percentage bonus that would be powerful. As far as a lot of the rest of these talents go, I think the baseline issue here is that all of these talents seem like they're really just a relatively small buff to the Grove Guardian ability itself, split up over 9 talents. What I also don't like a lot about the Keeper of the Grove tree is that it ignores a lot of the rest of the Druid toolkit. It isn't in the criteria, but something Blizzard mentioned in the blue post is that they wanted a lot of these choice nodes to be a choice between either doubling down onto one of the talents on the tree or offering an option that balances out the rest of the tree. And that is, I think, something that's missing here. One of the things the other healing hero talent trees so far have done is that they have been a fairly good mix of passives, actives, talents that affect your rotational abilities, some utility a little bit here and there, maybe some mobility or some group utility, but then also talents that affected cooldowns, like larger 2-3 minute cooldowns. None of those things are present on the Druid tree. Maybe some more damage ones could be good instead of just the one, but also maybe talents that hook Grove Guardians into more of the Resto Druid toolkit, rather than talents that just increase Grove Guardian by some minor percentage X. As far as the final grade for Resto Druid would go, if I'm going to go down this meme avenue and actually grade all of the hero talent trees, Keeper of the Grove gets an F. It's effectively got 4 criteria and it's failed like 3 of them. The plan at the moment is to do one of these videos every day until all of the healing trees are done, and then I'll also be doing one for augmentation. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and algorithm stuff.